The first time I noticed her, it wasn't anything cinematic. No music swelled, no lightning strike. She just handed me my coffee without looking at the cup, like she'd memorized the order. Large, 2 sugars, no room. She slid it across the counter with the kind of casual precision that comes from doing the same thing too many times. I blinked. You remembered? Her mouth twitched, not a smile, exactly, but something close. You've been in 3 times this week. Hard not to. I nodded, probably a little too fast, and stepped aside so the next person could order. Still, I couldn't shake the small pull of it. Someone remembering a detail about me, a trivial one, but mine. Most days I sat near the back by the window, half watching people go by while pretending to work on my laptop. Really, I didn't do much. I typed a sentence, deleted it, scrolled through half-written drafts I couldn't finish. Sometimes I just stared at the blank message window on my phone, thumb hovering over a number I never had the nerve to call. I don't think she ever saw me hesitate like that, but she always noticed other things. When my cup sat empty too long, she'd wander by during her break and ask if I wanted a refill, like it was no trouble. When the shop was loud, she'd lower her voice instead of raising it, forcing me to lean in. It wasn't flirting. At least I didn't think so. More like the kind of attention you give when you're awake enough to see someone, really see them, while the rest of the world just moves past. She was older than me. Mid-40s, maybe? The kind of older that carries itself differently, quieter, steadier. Her hair was tied back, strands falling loose when she bent to wipe a table. She wore simple clothes, nothing meant to stand out, yet I found myself tracing the line of her sleeves, the curve of her hands as she folded napkins into neat squares. I told myself it was curiosity. That's all. One afternoon, when the cafe was nearly empty, she set a cup down at my table without asking. "On the house. You look like you're working hard." I glanced at the screen, a half-finished sentence blinking back at me. "If this is hard work, I'm in trouble." She laughed softly, and it startled me, how light it was. "Then maybe it's thinking work." Her hand rested on the back of the chair across from me, just for a second. She didn't sit down. Didn't need to. That small gesture lingered longer than it should have. I tried not to read into it. She was kind, attentive, that was her job. But when her shift ended, she walked past my table and gave me a look, like she was about to say something and changed her mind. Her fingers tapped once against her phone before she slipped it into her bag. That night, I found myself staring at my own phone again, screen lighting my face in the dark apartment. No new messages. No one waiting for me. I typed half a sentence to a friend I hadn't spoken to in months, then erased it. Just when I set the phone down, it buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. "This could cost me everything." I stared at the words for a long time, the silence in the room pressing against me. Then another message appeared, as if whoever sent it couldn't stop themselves. "But maybe you're worth the risk." I didn't reply to her text right away. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then shut the phone off like that could erase what I'd read. By morning, I convinced myself I'd dreamed it. But when I walked into the cafe, she looked at me differently. Not obvious, just a flicker, the kind of glance that makes your chest tighten because you can't tell if it meant something or nothing at all. "Morning," she said, setting my usual down before I ordered. Her tone was even casual. Too casual. I nodded. "Thanks." We didn't mention the message. Neither of us would. It was later, when the shop was almost empty, that she carried her tea over instead of sitting in the back room. She sat across from me like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Busy?" she asked, nodding toward my laptop. "Trying to be." I smiled weakly. "Mostly failing." Her hand wrapped around her mug, steam rising between us. She didn't say anything right away, just stared into the tea as if reading something written in the leaves. Then, quietly, "When I was 23, I thought I had it figured out. Career, marriage, the whole script. Turns out, life doesn't care about your outlines. I blinked. It wasn't much of a confession, but something in her voice carried the weight of it. A pause, a small truth slipping out. You're divorced, I said before I could stop myself. She didn't flinch. Just nodded. 5 years now. Silence stretched. My throat tightened, not because of what she'd said, but because of the picture it painted. Her alone, rebuilding, sitting across from me in this moment when she didn't have to. I imagined reaching across the table, my hand brushing hers. I imagined her pulling back. I imagined the headlines in my mind: older woman, younger man, reckless, foolish, doomed. Instead, I folded the corner of my napkin over and over until it looked like a small paper boat. You ever think about starting over? I asked, voice quieter than I intended. She gave me a look I couldn't hold for long. Every day. But starting over costs more than people admit. Her words sat heavy between us, and I wondered if she meant the text, if she meant me. The bell above the door jingled, breaking the spell. She stood, collecting our cups. I should get back. I nodded, watching her retreat. Nothing about her movements seemed different, yet I felt like I'd crossed some invisible threshold. As she passed, she placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, not long enough for anyone to notice, but long enough for me to feel the warmth of it even after she walked away. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. The next week felt different. I came into the cafe at my usual time, but she wasn't behind the counter. A younger barista, maybe college age, took my order. She smiled too brightly, asked if I wanted to try a new seasonal drink. I shook my head, distracted, eyes flicking toward the back door like a habit. When she finally appeared, apron tied loosely, hair pulled back in a quick knot, I felt myself sit straighter. She noticed. Of course she did. You're early today, she said, wiping her hands on a towel. I glanced at the clock. Same time as always. Her lips curved, faint, almost teasing. Maybe it feels earlier. We didn't linger then, too many people around. But later, when the rush cleared, she drifted by my table. Not sitting this time. Just standing close enough that I had to look up. You write every day? She asked. Try to. Doesn't mean it's good. Her eyes softened. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. It's not about good. It's about showing up. The way she said it, I knew she wasn't just talking about writing. Before I could answer, the door opened, and a friend of mine stepped inside. He spotted me instantly, waved. I forced a smile back. Didn't know this was your hangout, he said, sliding into the chair across from me without asking. His eyes flicked toward her retreating figure. She your? No, I cut in too fast. Just the barista. He raised his eyebrows, but let it drop. I couldn't focus on the conversation after that. Not with her moving behind the counter, her movements quieter now, more deliberate. I wanted to explain, to catch her eye, but she never looked my way again while my friend sat there. When he finally left, the cafe felt empty even though 3 other customers remained. She came over, clearing his cup from the table. You didn't tell me you had company. There was no accusation in her tone, but the distance in her eyes stung. It wasn't planned, I said. He just showed up. She nodded, stacking the cups neatly. Her fingers brushed mine for a second too long when she reached for the saucer. Neither of us pulled away right away. Silence. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Tried again. She shook her head slightly, almost imperceptible, as if warning me not to finish the thought. Her hand lingered on the edge of the table, then drew back. I should close up soon, she said. Voice steady. Too steady. I nodded, throat dry. She turned, walked back to the counter. And yet, When she passed again on her way to lock the door, she paused by my chair. We didn't speak. Her hand rested on the back of my chair, close enough that if I leaned back just an inch. But I didn't. Neither did she. We stayed like that, suspended, almost, until she exhaled, low and uneven, and pulled her hand away. The moment broke, but the air between us didn't settle. Not really. The silence pressed in, thick, impossible to ignore. Her eyes didn't move from mine. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid between us, years of her life pressing against the unsteady beginnings of mine. She swallowed hard. You don't understand what you're asking. I'm not asking, I said, though my voice betrayed me, softer than I meant. I'm just here. Her shoulders lifted in the faintest sigh, like she wanted to let something go but couldn't. I've already made enough mistakes. I almost reached for her hand, but stopped an inch short. My fingers curled back into my lap. Maybe this isn't one of them. She gave a quiet, almost broken laugh, not from humor, but from disbelief. You're too young to know the difference. And yet, even as she said it, she didn't move away. Her knee shifted slightly, brushing mine. A fraction. Barely there. But it set every nerve in me alight. The world felt small in that moment, just the dim park light above us, the bench slick with dew, and her sitting so close I could smell the faint trace of coffee and soap on her skin. She looked down, as if ashamed of the closeness, then whispered, If someone saw us! I leaned in, not enough to close the distance, but enough that she felt it. Enough that she stiffened, then didn't move. Then what? I asked, barely breathing the words. Her lips parted. No answer came. The air trembled between us, fragile as glass. I could see her hand inching toward mine, stopping just shy. I could see the flicker in her eyes, a question, a warning, a plea. I thought she would say something final then. Instead, she looked at me and whispered the most dangerous thing of all. Do you really know what you want? And the question hung there, like the night itself was waiting for my answer. It was raining when I walked her home. Not heavy rain, just the kind that seeps in, slow and persistent, making the air smell like wet earth and rust. She didn't offer an umbrella, and I didn't ask for one. We just walked, shoulders brushing now and then, either of us pulling away. At her doorstep she stopped. Fumbled with her keys. Stared at the lock without trying to open it. I waited. My hands shoved into my pockets so I wouldn't do something stupid. Finally she said, You shouldn't be here. The words were flat, but her voice cracked at the edges. I know, I said. She turned then, rain streaking her hair against her face. You don't. You think this is just two people who happen to notice each other. But for me. She stopped, shaking her head. For me it's my job, my reputation, your life. I finished for her. She looked at me, startled. Then nodded. The silence stretched, filled with the sound of rain tapping the steps. My throat burned with everything I'd kept back. I couldn't hold it anymore. I don't come to that cafe for the coffee, I said quietly. I sit there because it's the only place I feel seen. Like maybe I matter. And it's because of you. Her eyes softened, but her mouth stayed tight. She whispered, Don't say things you'll regret later. I won't regret it, I said before I could stop myself. I'll regret staying quiet. Her breath caught. She looked down at the keys in her hand, fingers trembling slightly. Then she let them drop into her bag. For a long moment neither of us moved. The street was empty, the world narrowed to the wet steps, the flicker of the porch light, her hand resting uncertainly against the doorframe. She whispered, almost to herself, You're too young to carry this weight. Maybe, I admitted. But it doesn't change what I feel. Her eyes met mine then, searching, cautious, and something else I hadn't seen before. Not longing, not guilt, but the raw fear of wanting what you shouldn't. I thought she would push me away. Instead, she reached out, fingertips brushing the back of my hand. A fleeting touch, but it felt like the ground shifting beneath me. We stood like that, either of us moving closer, either stepping back. Just two people suspended in a fragile, impossible moment. She exhaled, the sound almost a laugh, almost a sigh. This could cost me everything. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard. And I'm worth the risk? Her hand squeezed mine, light but real. She didn't answer with words. Just gave the smallest nod, rain dripping from her lashes. And then, softer than anything I'd ever heard. Okay. Time has a way of softening the sharp edges. Not erasing them, just sanding them down until they don't cut the same way anymore. Weeks passed after that night on her doorstep. We didn't leap into anything. No declarations, no dramatic changes. Just small adjustments. I still came to the cafe, but not every day. Some mornings I stayed home, wrote more, let the absence breathe. She didn't hover as much when I was there. She let the space between us feel natural, not charged. And somehow, that made the closeness stronger. One morning, she set a cup of tea across from me instead of my usual coffee. Thought you might need something different today, she said with a quiet smile. I sipped it, though it wasn't what I'd normally order, and found myself liking it. Later that week, I walked with her again, this time not in the rain, just a cool evening with the sky turning violet. We ended up at the same bench, damp from dew. She didn't sit right away. She looked at it, then at me, then finally lowered herself down with a small sigh, like she was allowing herself to be part of something again. We didn't talk much. But at one point she glanced at her watch and said, almost teasing, 8:47. You're predictable, you know. I laughed, shaking my head. Guess you've got me figured out. Her hand brushed mine again, not tentative this time, not testing. Just there. Steady. And I realized I wasn't holding my breath anymore. Life didn't suddenly turn into a movie. She still worked long shifts, still carried the weight of her past. I still wrestled with unfinished drafts, with the uncertainty of what I was doing. But now, the silences between us weren't heavy. They were comfortable. Sometimes, I'd watch her fold napkins at the counter, the same neat squares she always made. And I'd feel it, the quiet reminder that love, if that's what this was becoming, doesn't need to arrive with fanfare. It can be in the way someone remembers your order. In the way they glance up at 8:47 a.m. and expect to see you. In the way a simple, okay, still lingers, long after the night it was spoken. On another walk, she asked me suddenly, "Why do you keep coming back?" I thought about answering with something clever, something safe. But I didn't. Because this feels like the only place I'm not invisible. She looked at me for a long time then, like she was weighing every risk again, and deciding, slowly, carefully, that she could live with the cost. Her hand slipped into mine, no hesitation this time. We sat there until the streetlights buzzed on. Neither of us said another word. We didn't need to. And maybe that's the thing, love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just stays.